Having looked at 1D from the outside now, I got to see like how big it was, because when you were in the band, your work just becomes a bit normal and like you're in a little bubble and you don't get to see what it looks like from the outside. It's only looking back now I realise how lucky we were. Like, there was no one doing stadiums at the time.
Harry Styles just said something no one saw coming. Not about fame. Not about his music. But about what really ended his friendship with Niall Horan. And it wasn't a fight. It wasn't betrayal. It was something far quieter. Something that eats away at bonds until there's nothing left but polite silence. For years, fans called them the heart of One Direction, the golden duo. Neil, the light, the accessible one. Harry, the mystery, the supernova. Together, they made chaos feel like camaraderie. They were the perfect complement, the balance to the whirlwind that became their lives. But if you listen closely to Harry's latest interviews, something's changed. He's no longer just nostalgic. He's reflective, detached, almost grieving for a life, and a person he no longer knows. Some relationships don't end, they just fade, Harry once said. He was talking about more than romance. He was talking about the quiet heartbreak of platonic love. This is the story of how a brotherhood built on shared dreams quietly dissolved under the impossible weight of success, and what Harry finally exposed about the silent killer of their bond. Chapter 1. Two boys, one shared anchor. It started the way all great stories do, with uncertainty, chaos, and a shared feeling of being terribly overwhelmed. Neil was the cheerful Irish kid with a guitar, the one who looked like he could be your best mate. Harry, the shy boy with a voice that didn't sound like anyone else's, the one who carried the effortless weight of stardom even then. When fate, or Simon Cowell, threw them together, it wasn't just a band forming. It was a lifeline. A silent promise, we'll survive this together. Through sleepless nights, the white noise of screaming crowds, and hotel hallways that never felt like home, they became each other's anchor. They were the ones who truly understood the bizarre, isolating experience of global fame at an impossible speed. Neil was always there to lighten the mood, Harry once said in a backstage clip. He was the steady point when everything else felt like a hurricane. But here's the crushing irony. Sometimes the person who makes you laugh the most is the one you grow the farthest from. You stop seeing them as they are and start seeing them as the person you needed them to be during that specific, shared crisis. Because when success grows louder, real, quiet voices get drowned out. The shared reality they once inhabited fractured. And what began as two boys chasing a dream slowly became two men chasing different worlds, with different pressures and different needs. They had built a friendship on a scaffolding of shared work. Once that scaffolding was removed, the entire structure had to stand on its own, and the foundations had quietly eroded. But what exactly happened in those years after One Direction split, when Harry stopped calling and Neil stopped asking? When the shared trauma ended, what was left? Chapter 2. The distance no one talks about. That's when the silence started. Not the public kind, not a headline-making feud. The quiet kind that creeps into friendship like fog, making the familiar coastline invisible. In interviews, Neil often laughed it off, masking the hurt with his characteristic Irish charm. Harry's doing his thing, I'm doing mine. We're busy, lads. But behind that easy smile, fans and observers noticed a gaping hole. No more public support. No birthday posts. No tour shout-outs. For a bond that was once so public, so vibrant, the absence of any connection spoke volumes about the distance. They went from finishing each other's sentences on a global stage to having no sentences left to share. When Harry released Fine Line, many thought songs like Falling, and To Be So Lonely hinted at a crushing romantic heartbreak. But insiders and deep-cut analysts suggested otherwise. Some lyrics weren't about a girlfriend at all. They were about the devastating loss of a connection he couldn't replicate. Don't blame me for falling. I was just a boy who had too much to say, he sings. Consider that line, too much to say. Could that have been for Neil? The friend who could no longer process the astronomical weight of Harry's evolving fame? The distance wasn't about lack of love, it was about lack of common language. Because just when it seemed like the silence was permanent, that the distance had hardened into fate, Harry said something that changed everything we thought we knew about their separation. Chapter 3. What Harry finally admitted. In a deeply vulnerable and rare conversation, Harry admitted he struggled to keep any friendships alive that were forged during the band era. He didn't make an excuse, he gave a heartbreaking explanation. Sometimes, when you go through something massive with people, the only thing you have in common is that one thing. Once that's gone, you don't know what to talk about anymore. This wasn't anger, it was erosion. The slow, insidious decay of connection, when the intense, singular focus of life stops being shared. They were both living lives so completely different that the emotional geography of their friendship became unrecognizable. Niall's solo career was modest, acoustic, grounded in songwriting and touring. He chose an approachable, relatable path. Harry's? Astral, cinematic, transcendent. He chose to become a living, evolving piece of art. They weren't rivals, they were reflections moving in opposite directions, one toward myth and one toward reality. They were like planets once in the same close orbit, now drifting further apart, governed by different gravitational pulls. The world asked something fundamentally different of each of them, and those demands created an impossible rift. But every drift has a catalyst, the final invisible pressure that makes the separation inevitable. And Harry just revealed what that pressure was. Chapter 4, The Pressure That Broke It. Harry's full quote offered the core thesis of their entire story. The fame part of it didn't end friendships, but how people treated you because of it did. Think about that for a moment. It wasn't the music, the money, or the egos. It was the way the world recalibrated around Harry that made Niall's place in his life obsolete. While Niall could still walk into a pub, play a round of golf, and maintain some semblance of a normal existence, Harry's world became a gilded cage. He couldn't breathe without flashbulbs. He became a symbol, a commodity, a performance piece, mythologized, idolized, dissected down to every single choice. This difference created an immediate, impenetrable barrier to intimacy. How can you be honest with a friend who can still live a life you've lost forever? How can you complain about the struggle of your life when his is, on the surface, a god-tier success? This gulf made every interaction fraught. Every text message that went ignored by a publicist looked like personal betrayal. Every silence felt like a calculated distance. Fame had rewritten the fundamental rules of their friendship contract. It was no longer a bond between two equals. It was a conversation between a global icon and a man trying to stay grounded. Harry realized that the very walls his success built around him were what pushed his oldest friends away. In truth, Harry didn't choose to walk away. He was pushed by the walls fame built around him. Walls so high, so soundproof, that even Niall's characteristic laughter couldn't climb over them anymore. But then came something unexpected, a delicate, beautiful olive branch, in the form of a song. Chapter 5, The Hidden Apology in Plain Sight. Fans are now convinced that Harry's subtle yet profound message to Niall was hidden in one of his most powerful tracks, Love of My Life. It's not a traditional love song, but a reflection on a life-altering, non-romantic bond. The lyrics are gut-wrenching when applied to a friendship lost to time and circumstance. He sings, "Maybe you don't need me anymore." At first, people heard a breakup. But when you look deeper, it perfectly mirrors the emotional arc of his friendship with Niall. The tension, the unspoken words, the final, resigned acceptance that the shared past is enough. It was the love of my life / just the love of my life, he sings. Metaphorically, it's a letter sent too late, a beautiful melancholic apology wrapped in melody. It says, I see the distance. I know I contributed. And I value what we had more than you can ever know. And here's what's fascinating. Niall responded not with words, but with music. His song Heaven carries a seemingly casual but profoundly meaningful line. If we don't have it all, who cares? To the casual listener, it's just a lyric about acceptance. But to those who followed their story, it sounds exactly like forgiveness. It sounds like the moment Niall chose to let go of the bitterness, of the expectation, and accept the relationship for what it is, not what it was. Yet even forgiveness doesn't guarantee reconnection. Because Harry's next move, his final emotional confession, shocked everyone. Chapter 6, The Confession That Changed Everything. He finally admitted what most celebrities never, ever do. He pulled back the curtain on the most isolating aspect of global fame. Sometimes, I grieve people who are still alive. Let that sink in. He didn't say he missed them. He didn't say he hated them. He said he grieved them. Grief is the emotion reserved for final, permanent loss. It's the acknowledgement that the person you knew, and the version of yourself you were with them, is gone forever. That single gut-punching line sent the fandom into a profound, sad chaos. Was he talking about Niall? It made undeniable, painful sense. You can love someone deeply and still lose them to time, distance, or the intense, necessary transformation that comes with becoming a legend. Harry didn't expose Niall's flaws. He exposed his own isolation. He exposed how chasing evolution can mean leaving behind the people who knew you before you changed. Before the lights. Before the legend. And in that revelation lies the universal truth every fan felt. Sometimes, growing apart isn't betrayal. It's survival. But the story, thankfully, doesn't end there. Because what happened after that confession surprised even Harry himself. Chapter 7, The Unseen Reunion, and the Truth About Healing. In 2023, for the first time in what felt like forever, they were photographed together at a private London event. There were no interviews. No public statements. Just two men smiling quietly, without the world shouting their names, demanding a performance of friendship. Sources close to both said it wasn't about desperately trying to rekindle the past, or recreating the One Direction dynamic. It was simply about peace. Harry had grown into his artistry and understood his isolation. Niall had found freedom and contentment in simplicity and his own creative lane. And maybe, just maybe, that necessary distance, that period of profound individual growth, was exactly what they both needed to find each other again on new, healthier terms. They say real friendship doesn't die. It just waits patiently in the dark, until both hearts are ready to see the light again, on their own terms. And Harry? He's no longer hiding from that light. In finally exposing what ended his friendship with Niall, he reminded the world that endings aren't always failures. Sometimes, they're just chapters closing before new, more mature, and more honest ones can begin. Chapter 8, Closing Reflections, The Weight of What We Don't Say. There's something haunting and sacred about the silence between friends. It's not the absence of words, it's the terrifying echo of everything meaningful that was left unsaid, and then became too late to say. Harry and Niall's story isn't just about the dizzying heights of fame. It's a masterclass on the invisible line between connection and isolation. They taught us that you can lose someone without losing love. That maturity sometimes means letting go of the expectation of proximity without bitterness. And maybe, in the end, that's what Harry wanted us to understand. The real exposure wasn't about Niall's failure to keep up. It was about himself, the boy who learned that even the brightest stars need impossible, suffocating amounts of space just to breathe. Your turn to reflect. So, what do you think? Was this drift inevitable for a bond forged under such extreme pressure, or could they have found a way back sooner if they had simply talked? Drop your thoughts and your own stories about drifting friends in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and share it with a friend who understands what that kind of distance truly feels like. And if you want more emotional storytelling and celebrity analysis, make sure to subscribe to the Mymusing channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the only way to heal the silence is to start the conversation.